Hi friends, it's Miss Homan from Room 9. I'm coming back to you with the second part of our Wonders activity this week. Welcome back. I'm so thrilled to be here with you. Um, I know that this is going to be a really great lesson. We're going to learn about a girl who does something that's never really been done before, and we're going to kind of look at that. Now, if you remember, we talked about point of view. And we talked about two different types of point of view. We talked about the kind that is who the author is and who's writing it and whose point of view the story is from. But we also talked about the point of view of an event and how different people see things differently. We talked about Paul and Wyatt and how they looked at the event of finding that game at the park in two different ways. And therefore, Paul thought one thing and Wyatt thought something else. So we are going to also look at another event today about how two different people or two different groups of people see the same set of events. Now, if you recall, let's think if we can remember, what was our essential question this week? What is the main thing that we're looking for in our stories? Oh, you want me to use this chart? Great idea. All right, right here we have our chart and it says, what do good citizens do? So glad you reminded me. I had a chart behind me. What do good citizens do? And the three things we talked about that good citizens do are they help others, they make strong choices, and they think of others' needs as well as their own. So we talked about helping your mom. We talked about being a kind friend at recess when we go back to school. We talked about all sorts of different things. But really, we have to talk about what do good citizens do? We talked about responsibility, and the story that we're going to read about today talks about a specific responsibility that we have in our country, and we are going to look at those vocabulary words right now to remember what we were talking about. So let's take a look at our vocabulary. 1 second. There we go. Okay, words to know. Let's read our words. Read with me so I can hear you. Champion, determined, issues, promises, responsibility, rights, volunteered, and votes. Now, before we get started, not only do we need to know our words, we need to remember what they mean. So let's look at that. Champion. Champion. Does anyone remember? If you think you remember, put your finger on your nose. Oh, what do you think? Okay, you're right. That's a great idea. Champion is the winner. So someone who won a contest. Determined. The boy determined which books to check out of the library. Thinking. Oh, I think I heard someone. Decided. Issues. The fireman talked about issues of fire safety with the children. Issues? Yes, I agree that issues are something that we talk about in class family meeting. They're important things. Let's look at what it says right here. Important problems or subjects that need to be talked about. Promises. Zach and John made promises to tell the truth and stay friends. So promises are words that you say that you know you're going to do. So you don't want to make a promise if you're not going to keep it. It is my responsibility to clean my room every week. And when we talked about that, we talked about classroom responsibilities and how if it's your mess, it's your responsibility to clean it up. So it's a job that you have to do if it's your responsibility. Rights. Going to school is one of your rights as a citizen. It's something that the law says you can have or do. So no one can say you can't go to school just because. Right now we can't go to school, obviously, because of this pandemic and this illness. But on a regular day, in a regular situation, You have the right to go to school. Volunteered. This is something that I know you guys are excellent at because you volunteer to do all sorts of things. So a volunteered is when you offer to do something. And votes. I wonder who got the most votes in our class election. Votes are choices made by people to elect someone or something to do. We talked about voting in a Zoom meeting for a story, or we talked about voting to see what we want to do for recess games. So those are all different things that you can vote about. So we are going to look at a story today that talks about voting and responsibility. And then we were going to do a couple little activities after it. Right now is a good time to pause the video, maybe walk around for a second, get a pen, pencil, crayon, marker, whatever you're going to write with, and a piece of paper. You're not going to need it right away, but you are going to need it. So go ahead and pause. I'll be right here waiting for you when you get back, and then we'll get started on our story. All right, are you ready? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Excellent. Okay, our story today is Grace for President. It is by Kelly DiPuccio, and it is illustrated by Liyuan Pham. We're going to read about a class that learns about voting and elections. One Monday morning in September, Mrs. Barrington rolled out a big poster with all of the president's pictures on it. Grace Campbell could not believe her eyes. Where are the girls? That is a very good question, said Mrs. Barrington. The truth is, our country has never had a woman president. Grace sat at her desk and stewed. Stewed, what does that mean? Anybody have an idea? Ooh, I hear that. Okay, that's a good idea. Ooh, that's another good idea. Okay, so put those ideas together, and stewed is like you sat there and you thought about it and you thought about it and you get a little frustrated and you might get a little angry. You might stew if your brother got the last cookie. So, no girls! Who'd ever heard of such a crazy thing? Finally, she raised her hand. Yes, Grace? I've been thinking it over, and I'd like to be president. Several students in the class laughed. Not very nice. Well, I think that's a star-spangled idea, Grace, said Mrs. Barrington. In fact, we can have our own election right here at Woodrow Wilson Elementary. The snickering in the room stopped. Grace smiled. Would anyone else like to run for president? Mrs. Barrington asked the class. Nobody raised their hand. Becoming president was going to be easy, Grace thought. What do you think? The next day, Mrs. Barrington made an announcement. In the name of democracy, I've invited Mr. Waller's class to join our election. Their class has nominated Thomas Cobb to be their presidential candidate. Grace's heart sank. Thomas was the school spelling bee champion. His experiments always took a blue ribbon at the science fair, and he was the captain of the soccer team. Becoming president wasn't going to be so easy after all, Grace thought. The teachers put the name of all 50 states and the District of Columbia into a hat. Everyone except for Grace and Thomas got to choose a state. I'm Texas, said Anthony. I'm New Hampshire, said Rose. I'm Michigan, said Robbie. What does the number 17 mean? Each state is assigned a number of electoral votes. That number is determined by how many people live in that state, said Mrs. Barrington. Each of you will be a representative for your state. Okay, pause. This is not in the story, but this is actually how elections in the United States work. So your mom and dad, your teachers, your principal, we all go and we vote on voting day. and those votes go to our representatives, and the representative votes for all of California. And because California has a lot of people, we have more votes than some places that have less people. So this is real. And if you remember, this is a realistic fiction story. So this is something that is true and can happen and does happen every time we have a presidential election. Okay, back to the story. Altogether, our country has 538 electoral votes, Mr. Waller explained. On election day, the candidate who receives 270 electoral votes or more wins the election. Why 270? Asked Rose. That's more than half of all the electoral votes, Mr. Waller said. So if we were voting in room 9 about a story, and I said, do you want to read Pete the Cat or What Would Danny Do? And we vote, and Pete the Cat has 11 votes, automatically Pete the Cat is the winner because that's more than half of 20. Becoming president really wasn't going to be so easy, Grace thought. Grace came up with a campaign slogan. Make history. Vote Grace Campbell for president. Thomas came up with his own campaign slogan. Vote for Thomas Cobb, the best man for the job. His rhymes. Grace listened to the issues that were important to the students, and she made a list of campaign promises. Right here is her list. A peaceful school, no bullies. A cleaner school, no littering. Better hot lunches, no more fish stick tacos. Look at this girl. She does not look like she likes those tacos. Thomas made up his own list of promises. Free tutoring, free soccer lessons, fish stick tacos every week. Oh, they look like they have two different points of view about those fish stick tacos. Grace made campaign posters and buttons. Thomas made posters and buttons too. Each week, the teachers set aside time for the candidates to meet with their constituents. That's a new word. Constituents are the people who are voting. So that meant they were meeting with other students. Polls were taken. Voters were making their choices. Grace continued to campaign. At recess, she gave speeches. During lunch, she handed out free cupcakes. After school, she held rallies. Meanwhile, Thomas wasn't worried. He had cleverly calculated that the boys held slightly more electoral votes than the girls. At recess, Thomas studied his spelling words. During lunch, he worked on his latest science experiment. After school, he played soccer. Even before the election, Grace made good on her promises. He joined the safety squad. She joined the safety squad. She organized a school beautification committee, and she volunteered her time in the school cafeteria. In early November, Woodrow Wilson Elementary hosted a special Election Day assembly. Grace and Thomas took their places on stage as the school band began to play. Henry was the first representative to approach the microphone. The Yellowhammer state of Alabama cast its 9 electoral votes for Thomas Cobb. The last frontier state of Alaska casts its 3 electoral votes for the best man for the job, Thomas Cobb, said Fletcher. Hannah called out, the Grand Canyon state of Arizona cast its 10 electoral votes for Grace Campbell. And so it went. State after state after state cast their electoral votes. The scoreboard in the gymnasium kept track of the totals. The voting demonstration was quickly coming to an end. Clara approached the podium. The Badger state of Wisconsin cast its 10 votes for my best friend, Grace Campbell. Grace looked at the scoreboard. Thomas had 268 electoral votes. She had 267. There was only one state still unaccounted for: Wyoming. Thomas grinned. Grace felt sick. Sam walked up to the microphone. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Grace. He looked down at Grace's handmade flag. Sam didn't say a word. What are you waiting for? Thomas whispered. The band stopped playing. All eyes were on Wyoming. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. The equality state of Wyoming cast its 3 electoral votes for Grace Campbell. The gymnasium erupted in loud cheers and a few boos. Not nice. Mrs. Barrington approached the podium. With 270 electoral votes, the winner is Grace Campbell. Thomas looked stunned. Grace hugged Sam. Why did you do that? She asked. Sam handed Grace his flag. Because, he said, I thought you were the best person for the job. The following week, the students in Mrs. Barrington's class were preparing for their career day presentations. Grace volunteered to go first. She stood up at the front of the room and glanced at the poster still hanging on the wall. My name is Grace Campbell, and when I grow up, I'm going to be President of the United States. This time, everyone believed that she would. Wasn't that amazing? I love that story. She stuck to it. She worked hard. She got what she wanted. And we always talk about you do hard work and you can get the results that you want to see in our classroom. So now is the time that you are going to need your writing utensil and your piece of paper. I'm going to get the other camera working. Go ahead and pause it if you're not ready. This is a great time for that, to pause if you need to. I am just getting this camera working. And there we go. Is that straight? There we go. I was like trying to figure out why it wasn't working for me. Okay, so this is a Venn diagram. We have used these before in our classroom and in other writing activities. So what I want you to do is draw 2 circles. 1, 2. They want to overlap in the middle just a little bit. And if you look at my circles, they're not perfect. So go ahead and do that. While you're doing that, at the top, you're going to write Grace. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Grace, Thomas, and then down here at the bottom, I'm going to write both. Okay. Go ahead and do that. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Excellent. If you're not quite ready, go ahead and pause that video. Remember, when we are doing this, if you need to go back to the story, you can. The story will also be in your Wonders on your iPad. So we need to look at the campaign, and we are going to look at how Grace's point of view of the campaign, that is the time from when they decided who was going to be president or who was going to run for president to when the voting happened. That period of time is the campaign. We're going to look at Grace's point of view, and we're going to look at Thomas's point of view. And we're going to look at how they looked at things the same. That's going in the middle. So what was true of both of their campaigns, and what did they look at and see that was different? So I want you to think, thinking. What did they look at this in a similar point of view, and what did they look at in different points of view? So let's think. Let's think. Oh, excellent, excellent point. Both of them made posters and buttons. That is an excellent, excellent point. Okay, what is true of Grace's campaign that was not true of Thomas's campaign? Remember, we talked in the story where I said they both have different points of view about this. Excellent, good job. They have, she says, no more fish stick tacos. And what does Thomas say? Fish stick tacos every week. Does anyone remember what vocabulary word that was? That thing that they both made promises about that was important to people? Yes, I heard someone say issues. That's an issue that they had different points of view on. Okay, what was Thomas's point of view? How did he look at how to spend his recess, his lunch, and after school time? Right. After school, he played soccer. At recess, he practiced spelling. And what did he do at lunch? I mean, at lunchtime, I eat lunch, but he did a science experiment. Yes? Okay. So he was using his free time for himself. Now, how did Grace look at that? What was her point of view? She did speeches, rallies. What did she give out? What's our favorite thing? Cupcakes. What else did Grace do? Okay, I can see that. She kept her promises. She kept promises even before the voting. Do you remember that? She joined that committee. She was cleaning up, making the school beautiful, and she was helping in the cafeteria before she even got voted. What did Thomas do? What was Thomas's point of view? Thomas's point of view was that all the boys would vote for him. So remember, he counted up all the boys and he counted up all the girls and he said, there's more boys and they're going to vote for me because I'm a boy. What can you add to this? Let's think of one more thing together that was the same. Okay, they both made slogans, you're right, and they both made promises. What can you add? Take a minute, think of something. I want you to add it to your Venn diagram. Don't forget, you can always pause it. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So now, friends, now that we've looked at the point of view of the two main characters or the two candidates, Grace and Thomas, I wanted to say his name was something else. Grace and Thomas, I want you to use your Venn diagram and think of ideas, and you're going to write a paragraph, and it's going to be 3 to 5 sentences telling me in this story some things that were the same, some things that were different. You're going to use your summary skills, and you're going to use some detail skills. So in this story, Grace did this, this, and this. Thomas did this, this, and this. These were the things that they did that were the same. So just 3 to 5 sentences, and you're going to take a picture of that, and you are going to post it to your Class Dojo portfolio. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with, because you guys are going to come up with amazing sentences. I know it. So if you need anything, let me know on Class Dojo. Reach out to your teacher. I'm so excited to see what you guys are going to come up with for this Wonders lesson. So don't forget, a point of view is how a character sees an event. That's the kind of point of view we're talking about. So I will see you soon on your Class Dojo. Bye, guys.